In this regard, my intention was still aimless, as I saw too many obstacles in our way, which I already mentioned. While one would be eradicated with her release, several more crucial ones remained, which prevented us from truly being free. However, thinking positively, I concluded that the further paths would show when we took all our efforts and searched for them, not with our mind, but with our heart. While ruminating about short-term issues, I saw the handshake between the two lifting, so that he then turned around and came to me. Aaron, sharpen your sword and wear your armor. There's a war coming. Remember what you're fighting for and for whom, and then, only then, decide whether the enemy force is too fierce to withstand. But beware, a reckless surrender will overthrow both of you. After contemplation of which words he chose, I nodded, while I gave him my hand and with that my promise that I would invest wisely as demanded of me. He patted on my shoulder before he turned away and walked into the direction of the exit. He animated Jessica to go with him, whereupon she raised herself and walked to Chloe. I only heard a silent whisper then, "We'll talk later when my shift is over." As a consequence, she approached me and said, "Aaron, indeed, there will be a lot going on in the future. I don't need to be a mystic to see that, but I'm certain that you'll be able to manage that." I stretched out my hand to thank her for her optimism, which was to my surprise not directly returned. Instead, she looked at me and suddenly, out of nowhere, hugged me. "You too can do that." For my part, I was kind of paralyzed as a result of her unforeseen approach, but didn't wonder any further, although it was unimaginable to have such close contact with a girl who was not Chloe. Therefore, it felt eminently strange and at first uncomfortable, but luckily, from my point of view, she returned to a more neutral pose not much later. I didn't dare to imagine how I was standing there, prompting her to remark, "Aaron, you nerd, you truly haven't had much contact with girls, have you? I mean, yes, I'm a girl, but I'm also your friend, and yet I'm not your girlfriend. And friends do hug each other, but for anything further, you have to consult someone else." She turned around and blinked at Chloe, who coyly smiled back. Chloe and I might have shared a common thought there, which said, "Jessica, enough." Normally, that would have represented the embarrassment of the day, and Jessica would have slaked her thirst for jokes with that, but in the background played a different melody, which ultimately helped us forget that quite quickly. And in this aspect, there's no need to mention where our focus shifted on afterwards. Anyway, not much later, Jessica had to catch up with the doctor, as he was kind of a supervisor for her, and the last thing she should do is ruthlessly attracting the grudge of her own boss, as it wouldn't make things better. To prevent that from happening, Jessica also patted on my shoulder and consecutively invited me to visit her at some point, before she left with one wave at Chloe. Somehow I could suspect what she meant with that phrase, "at some point," but I couldn't afford to devote myself to that for too long, since it would only lead me closer to the unavoidable day. Anyway, from then on we were alone again, which implied once more making plans for the future. More urgent than ever, because every procrastination we considered today would be paid back tomorrow in the form of regret. And in those terms, we preferred to stay without depth of remorse. So we sat together, and yet again we let our thoughts revolve around ourselves. Chloe and I alike tried to find a hierarchy for the things we wanted to achieve within the coming weeks, sorted from the easiest to the most difficult as regards implementation. I mentioned in this regard also my desire I thought about earlier. Look, between all those little things we could do, there are a couple of major ones I would love so much to experience together with you. You remember the beginning of our acquaintance, when we talked about those beautiful locations, right? She wordlessly contemplated for a while, but soon found the appropriate memory. The beach, the mountains, how could I forget? In fact, such an experience is one of my most desired wishes for those weeks, and to reciprocate what you have said, you're the only one I want to do it with. But before she could continue indulging further, I interrupted by bringing forth my list of things I saw preventing that from happening. Believe me, disregarding how long I'm here on Earth, that is my life plan. But life plan implies that there's a lot of work and preparation to do beforehand. I mean, like earning money and accumulating confidence for it. Sadly, I don't have that much money to book such a trip, as you have to pay well for reaching those remote places, as much as I crave for doing that. After all, it's not a little trip to the next city, it rather would be a flight to another continent. But except for money, another factor represents time. And well, those are the most valuable resources in the physical world, simultaneously having a crucial relation to each other. No time, no money that can be earned, and no money, no time that can be bought. I don't know at all, Chloe, how we are supposed to brace something like that for real. And your parents won't let you go that easy, For them I'm still a stranger, even though your father showed me some sympathy. Strange enough to not let their daughter wander around with. Suddenly she took her index finger and performed a shh motion on my mouth by pressing it against my lips. My parents, they have changed so much throughout the last weeks, as the revelation of sympathy towards you proves. You must know, especially my dad was someone not being easily enthused by anyone or anything. Until then I even doubted that we were a family, no lie. He was cold and pragmatic, and everything/everyone that didn't serve a purpose for him was being neglected. You can imagine how my relationship to him looked like, considering that I was a teenager not creating anything but stress, and unlike his preference, consuming resources instead of producing them. To be honest, that's what I'm doing now more than ever, and yet he has converted. It proves that there is something beyond materialism and profit, for which exists no currency at all, the so-called feelings. However, let me assure you that within your apprehension lies the key for realization. I was severely perplexed due to her statement, so I downright begged her, "Chloe, please don't speak in riddles again, otherwise I'm rattling through any possible interpretation, and there are lots of them. Don't worry, Aaron, relax, just relax. I suggest you come over to my place when I'm being released soon, and then we can face out any concern or problem, believe me. Trust me, like last time, as it turned out well in the end, against our primal expectation. I mean, you are here, and I am here, so what could be better?" I showed a wide smile due to the carefreeness she emitted, but had to admit that she was absolutely right. Last time I trusted her, everything turned out to be just fine, so why not this time as well? The result matters, not the obstacles you encounter on the way to it, although they are significant for reaching it. Anyway, without further explanation, Chloe jumped to very meaningful advice. Instead of thinking about what could potentially go wrong, rather think about the fabulous things we will experience. Imagine countries, places, or activities. There are no borders. The more you can picture and feel into it, the less you will be caught up in worry and distress. Besides, preparation also includes to clear the air with your parents, as you likely still have to explain them everything. It is namely easier for everyone to work with the truth. I have first-hand proof. Only a vague assumption, but where are you right now according to your parents? I was nothing less than shocked due to the fact she completely exposed me without analyzing as it seemed. Wherever she got that information from, she proved thereby that she kind of knew me better than anyone else, maybe even better than I knew myself. But not knowledge referred to knowing facts about me, my age, my history and so on, but knowledge regarding the way I work, the patterns according to which I make decisions. Therefore, I was not far away from saying that she embodied a little me somehow, somewhere in herself, because she could not figure out how I was working with only empathy. If that was the case, she could merely feel my emotions or feelings, but never decipher my most profound algorithms. So when she has a piece of me, do I also have a piece of her to complement that? And if so, how do I access it, as it would make things so much easier? It would undoubtedly have the effect that we were able to interact on the whole another level, not tied to words and explanations. I don't know. After all, it was just a rudimental conclusion, as such an amount of intimacy was still unfamiliar for me. But be that as it may, the from her mentioned matter related to speaking with my parents represented a clear fact, as I neither could nor wanted to exclude them from the truth. They were still my parents, although that meant to throw them onto new terrain. Most likely they were concerned about me failing at the abitur because of that, so they probably shielded me from anything standing close to Chloe. For them, Chloe and the abitur were a contradiction, an interference that presupposed to be broken down. Well, with some effort it could be avoided, but held simple. Before, I criticized Chloe for holding me down with her excuses, so why should it be fair to become the old version of Chloe and thus leave mom and dad in the shadows? Just because I knew how it felt, it was not an option, so even while I was still surrounded by Chloe's embrace, I thought about the initiation, which should lead me to a little explanation, simply and concisely elucidating the motives that would guide me through the following weeks, while hoping for their approval somehow. But on the other side, just in case they shrank back, I proved that I didn't need others' endorsement for keeping my word when I disregarded Jessica's and the doctor's behavior lately. Or better, when I learned to disregard, as it was not by any means easy at the beginning. Though I knew my parents a little bit longer than the people of the previous example, I referred to the principle of mere exposure found in psychology. The longer you are exposed to a new situation, the more it will appear normal, whether it may occur in the form of a new person, a new job, or even the innovative attitude from a well-known person. My attitude, however, was clear. When I do not let myself be influenced by external sources, I will withstand any ever so fierce resistance, even when it means to disagree with my parents.